On November 10, 1975, the bulk freighter Edmund Fitzgerald sank during a severe storm on Lake Superior. She was fully loaded with 26,000 tons of iron ore. Numerous theories attempt to explain why the Fitzgerald sank that fateful day.
Hey everyone, History Mystery Man here, coming to you today from my hometown, Toledo, Ohio. And every year, this time of year, late October, early November, my thoughts automatically turn toward the Edmund Fitzgerald, the ill-fated freighter that broke apart in Lake Superior and sank on November 10th, 1975. Her 29 crew members all lost. And I just feel I've always had a really special connection to the story. For one, I'm fascinated with the story of the Fitzgerald, and ultimately as to what happened to it. I'm constantly contemplating that in my mind, but my special connection for a couple different reasons. First of all, I was a merchant marine and served on the Great Lakes for 12 years, pushing and towing oil barges all over the Great Lakes from one end to the other. Did a lot of marine construction, eventually became a tug captain, and I've always really had a deep respect for the industry. And I, in fact, served on a tug that worked all the seasons, winter, summer, spring, and fall. Most of the shipping industry on the Great Lakes, as you probably know, shuts down for the winter, but the tugs I was on did not. They were icebreakers. And if we got stuck, we'd break apart from the barge and go ahead and break a path through the ice. We'd back it up, ram it, back it up, ram it, constantly working it there in the winter. So I got to experience the Great Lakes in all the seasons, in all their glory and all their terror. And believe me, there were moments when I was completely terrified. Furthermore, the crew on the Fitzgerald, many of the crew members were from this Toledo, Ohio area and lived here in Northwest Ohio, including Captain Ernest McSorley, who was Canadian born and grew up in Ogdensburg, New York, but lived here in Toledo. In fact, the home you see behind me is the home that Captain McSorley lived in here in Toledo, his last known residence before he perished on the great ship. And every time I drive by here, I really have to pause, look, and just listen. You know, my thoughts on the Edmund Fitzgerald as to what happened are constantly evolving. I've always thought that more than likely broke in two with its 26,000 tons of steel taconite, just broke in two on the surface in 30 and 35 foot seas and went down like a rock. It went down fast. We know that, whatever happened, because there was never a distress signal that came from Captain McSorley that he was even in trouble. No crew members were ever found, so they're still on the ship. So whatever happened, it went fast. But I would say that my thoughts continue to evolve on actually what happened. So we're going to dig into that today. I'm going to sit down with Captain Darrell Walton, whose uncle Ralph G. Walton was an oiler on the Fitzgerald and went down with the great ship. We're going to visit the National Museum of the Great Lakes here in Toledo. Spectacular museum. You got to see it. So we're going to cover it as best as we can. This will be my annual tribute to the Edmund Fitzgerald and those brave crew members who went down on the great ship. Welcome aboard. Glad to have you along for the ride. So did you say you're from Ireland?
Yeah.
And you own the building?
Yes, I do own the building.
And you had no idea that Captain McSorley once lived here?
Absolutely not.
No. What do you think in learning the news? Is it?
I think it's very cool.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
I think it's very cool.
And you're from Ireland?
That's right.
And how'd you end up in Toledo?
I just ended up coming over here in the 80s.
Yeah, okay.
Get a job, make a few bucks.
I gotcha. Captain Ernest McSorley lived in your building.
That's right. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Especially if he lived in it when it sank.
Yeah, he absolutely did. I bet you...
Last time somebody asked me, how'd you end up in Toledo? I said, I took a wrong turn.
I know you've heard the song, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I've heard of the Edmund Fitzgerald. I've watched the documentary on the television.
Yeah, very cool.
I don't know if she's in or not. So.
Well,
the door is open.
The door is open?
Yeah, and just walk up and knock. She'll come out. She's very nice.
McSorley would have parked back here in those garages. And he would more than likely, for the most part, mostly came in through the back door here. That's where he lived, in number 1. What do you remember about your uncle that went down on the Fitz?
Sure, we're going to start there. That's a very good thing. He gave me the first car I ever owned in my life.
Really?
And he gave me a 1951 Willys. And then he gave me another car, 51 Plymouth. And that's what I learned how to drive. A 3-speed on the column. You probably remember those days.
Oh, of course.
And I learned to drive on that car. We had a 4-acre farm, and I was able to drive way out to the booties. He was a nice guy. A heck of a poker player. Tremendous pool player. Didn't even, play for a quarter a game. I never beat him once. He could run the table. But then he got his Oilers ticket, and he was on the Crispin Ogilvy for years. And in September of '75, in a bad docking, the Ogilvy hit something and messed up its rudder or prop or something. So instead of fixing it, they said, we'll fix it and winter layover. Okay? With his seniority, he bumps onto the Fitzgerald in September.
Wow.
Of
September of '75, the year it went down?
Yep.
Wow.
Now, please keep in mind that the Fitzgerald was the party boat of the fleet. Okay? And I can tell you, I sailed on the W.C. Richards in 1973. The old heads had their Irish coffee all day. And people can look that up on Google, what Irish coffee means. And the kids were going behind the smokestack, hitting the old joint every now and then.
Yeah.
Well, the Fitzgerald was the cleanest boat. It wasn't a self-unloader. It was clean. It was an easy job. It really was. And it went for the top seniority people. So he was real fortunate to get on it. And
or it seemed at the time, anyway.
well, yeah, because my dad had been chief engineer on it for... See,
so your dad sailed on the Fitz as well?
Oh, many times, because all the chiefs had to be qualified on all the different boats. So when this chief went on vacation, this chief could go over and take his place. And when my brother Tom sailed at the same time Dad was chief, as young kids, we'd go down to the dock all the time. Every 5 days, took 5 days. We'd go to Toledo, Silver Bay, back to Toledo. And we go down there, and of course we're waiting now. The boat's been docked for an hour. Where's Dad? Where's Tom? Mom would say, go up there and go get him. So I'm looking all over the Fitzgerald for him.
So you were on the Fitz?
Oh, many times. Sure. What a beautiful boat. She would and she hauled passengers. That was Tom's job, was to cater to the passengers, the big wigs of the company.
Sure.
And,
sure. Do you remember what you were doing when you heard the news that the Fitzgerald went down? Kind of like a John Kennedy moment.
I'll
you
never
remember
forget
that?
as long as I live.
What?
Chris and I had been married we got married at Valentine's Day in '75. And this was November 10th. We were living in a farmhouse. We rented a farmhouse, 45 acre. We had horses then. And that night, I had cut a deal with the landlord. I'll paint your house for a couple months if you give us free month. Right, you buy the paint and I'll paint your farmhouse. It was a mistake. This thing was a monster. But the wind was blowing so hard that day that I couldn't stay up on the ladder. I was afraid it was going to blow me off. So anyway, Chris goes to bed after supper about 7:30, 8 o'clock. And I'm watching a movie called Where Eagles Dare with Richard Burton and Clint Eastwood. And about an hour into that movie, the thing comes across the bottom of the screen. Giant ore carrier missing on Lake Superior. I just knew, right now I'm getting goosebumps, that it was somebody that I knew. Because my dad's out there, my cousins are all out there, my uncle's out there, my brother George is out there. So I called Coast Guard Toledo, and they wouldn't tell me nothing. I said, come on, we got a lot of family out there. He says, I shouldn't do this, but here's a phone number for Coast Guard Sault Ste. Marie. You call them. So I called Sault Ste. Marie, told him the story. He says, it's the Fitzgerald. I says, well, she's probably laying behind an island somewhere riding. I said, no. It's gone. There's no question it's gone. And I called my mother right away. And she said the same, oh, they're laying behind an island. These things happen. Like, oh, Mom. And I said, please tell me what boat is Dad on. And he was on the reserve. And he never recovered because he lost not only his brother, but 28 other his friends that he worked with for years and years and years.
He never got past that.
Well, you got to remember now, his baby sister had died earlier that year with some kind of brain cancer thing. But he was in the Battle of the Bulge with General Patton. He got the Bronze Star.
Your dad?
Yeah. Can you imagine the death and destruction and as long as he kept working, he could carry that. But when he retired, he just started drinking heavy. He couldn't take it no more.
Yeah. And
he retired right after the Fitzgeralds. The very next year is when he retired.
So what happened to the Edmund Fitzgerald? What's your take on it?
Okay, first of all, they did end up issuing gale warnings then, okay? But they'd already left 2 harbors there, Riches by Spear. They left. And they were following the southern track. And had they stayed on that southern track, I'm sure that they'd have been all right. But him and Anderson, Bernie Cooper on the Anderson.
Arthur M. Anderson.
Arthur M. Anderson.
To get protection from the north wind.
But that's where the whole thing converged, was up north, okay? And if you check the charts, they got to go right past Chummy Bank, which is right there by Caribou Shoals. After the sinking, the next spring, they went out there and had all the depth sounders, and here that Caribou Shoal, that 6 fathom shoal, went out at least another mile from what the chart said. So he thought even Bernie Cooper said, he's way too close. He's too close. Remember, Cooper was trying to give him, because the radars were gone.
The Fitzgerald lost both its radars.
That's correct.
It didn't know where exactly it was.
And the Whitefish Point light was out, as was the radio direction finder.
The beacon was out as
right.
well. So the Fitzgerald purposely slowed down to let the Anderson catch up, because the Anderson was acting as its eyes.
He called Bernie Cooper and said, I've got my fence is down, deck rail fence, and I've lost 2 vents, and I've taken on a port side list. Because I think he bottomed out on that 6 fathom shoal, and he started taking on, and they had 7,000 gallon per minute pumps, and they were going full tilt.
See, you don't think a hatch cover failed from improper latching or anything like that, coming in from the top? You think the water was coming in from the bottom?
I think it was coming in from the bottom only because they don't have any way of getting water out of the holes. They can only pump water out of the ballast tanks, and of course, if you're loaded, the ballast tanks are empty. You know,
Mm-hmm.
So I think he was getting lower and lower. Now, if I may, this is where we're going to take a slight detour.
All right.
The Fitzgerald, you got summer load lines and winter load lights, the Plimsoll marks on the side of the ship. You know what I'm talking about. The Fitzgerald was designed to draw 27 feet. You could load cargo down to 27-foot mark in the summertime. But come November 1st, you got to go to winter load lines, which gives you another 3 feet of freeboard. I don't know if Ogilvy Norton did it or Columbia Transportation, one of them got the Coast Guard to rescind those winter load lines. So November 10th, she was running summer load lines, meaning she was 3 foot deeper than she should have been for what the design of the vessel was.
Mm-hmm.
My dad said this, Brother Tom said this. I'm former president of the International Shipmasters Union Lodge number 9 in Toledo. I've talked to many guys that sailed on that boat. You've got expansion joints that go like this because it's 2 football fields long. The Fitzgerald would do this, but it would also do this. Because all ships up until that time had 5 cargo holds, but when they built the Fitz, they made 3 gigantic holds, taking out 2 bulkheads that they should have had. Transverse cross bulkheads. They took them out. They weren't there. They didn't put them in. So you're going like this, and you're going like this. And she was a tender boat, meaning at certain waves and certain winds, you had to be real careful. Mick Shorley himself, 5 years before that boat went down, says, I pray I'm never in a storm on this boat, a bad storm, as tender as it is. And they overloaded her for years, and she had a lot of cracked in the welds. You would think.
Yeah, it wasn't riveted together. It was weld-plated together.
Welded. And you go, well, the Arthur M. Anderson made it through it. Well, the Arthur M. Anderson had 5 cargo holds with 2 extra bulkheads. The Fitzgerald didn't. Okay? And I know that's another reason my dad never recovered, because he knew about these issues. And it's the only job you got. You keep your mouth shut because he's getting ready to retire. You don't want to mess his pension up. That's what everybody did. They just we'll be okay.
Sure.
This is a new boat. It's only 17 years old. We'll be fine. They had 75 knot winds. Bernie Cooper said he had waves breaking over the top of the pilot house. That's 30 some odd feet off the surface. It was too much. They just and at Lake Superior, there really not too many places to run. They both said, I've never seen seas like this. Because, first of all, the Fitzgerald was lower in the water. She was taking on water. And she almost made Gord Lightfoot's right. She almost made Whitefish Point. They could have beached the boat Whitefish Bay there.
Sure. Or got some lee from the land. But whether the water was coming in through the bottom or was coming in through the top, it was coming in. He knew he was taking on water. He reported that to the captain on the Arthur M. Anderson, Bernie Cooper. We're taking on water. We have the list. And then the last words heard from McSorley at somewhere around 7:10 was, we're holding our own. And then he disappeared from radar. So in the 30, 35-foot seas they were in, some say it was a rogue wave that took them under, but I mean, It
Three
either
sisters.
nosedived in and just kept and never came back and kept going, or it broke in half on the surface and fell with 26,000 tons of taconite, or it broke apart on the way down. What's your take?
First of all, I can tell you that I have met the Daniel J. Morrell. Dennis Hale was the sole survivor.
You met him?
Yeah, I've got his book. I went drinking with him. When the Daniel J. Morrell sank, it split in half on this. No, Dennis Hale said this is exactly what happened. It split in half, and he was on the front end, sleeping in his underwear. Was it? And the alarm went off. He had time to grab a pea coat. It was a big navy pea coat. No pants, no shoes, no socks, no nothing. Got up on deck just as that bow was going down. They watched that bow sink, and he says, here comes the stern right from it. The last second it turned, and that stern was like this, going off into the storm. They found that stern years later, 12 miles away from where the bow was.
It's powered ahead of the bow.
Yeah.
The bow.
So had the Fitzgerald been broken in half on the surface, they would have been farther apart, but they're right there. They're real.
The bow is right side up.
Yep.
The stern is upside down,
Yep.
nearly a football field away. Does that seem like if it would have hit the bottom and then broke,
Yep.
does it seem like the pieces are too far apart for that
I don't
to
think
happen?
so.
No?
Because if you look at the bow section of the pilot house of the Fitzgerald, they've got see my bill of my hat here. All late freighters have that too to keep the sun out of their eyes. If you look at those pictures, it's all bent down like this. When he hit the three sisters, that's what Bernie Cooper warned him. He says, hey, we just got hit with 3 monstrous waves that are coming your way. I think it lifted him up, and down she went. When it nosedived in, the stern it's only, boat's 729 feet long. Half of the stern is still sticking out of the water. I think that the momentum, that's what my dad said, the momentum
Because
doesn't.
it's only in
and she just
530
flipped
feet of
up.
water.
That is correct.
So the boat is longer than the depth it's in.
That is correct. His dad had passed away, so I didn't get a chance to talk Bernie himself, but I talked with his son. And he said it was his opinion that they were way too close to that chummy bank. They bottomed out, and when them 3 big waves came, he nosedived, right? Because my dad thought that, Bernie Cooper's son thought that, and people that worked on the Fitzgerald thought that.
Either way, whether it broke in two first or nosedived in, it went down fast. And so fast, there was not even a help, a distress call, an SOS.
The radio telephone was right here.
A mayday, nothing.
He's sitting, he's going, he go, mayday, never even got a chance to do that.
It happened fast.
So that's how quick it happened. Now, consequently, because as president of the shipmasters there, I got to meet some very interesting people. One of the guys was on the soundings I told you about the following spring, where they found out, another mile out. He said they sent divers over that 6 foot, and there was all kind of red bottom paint on the bottom of that. The official word, no. You know why?
See, the official word came out just the opposite. There's
Exactly,
nothing down
because
there.
Ogilvy Norton will be held liable. My aunt got $600 for that. That's all any crew member got was $600. That was
Really?
it. That was all they. Unless you can prove negligence, why do you think they make it? Oh, well, you can't dive on it because somebody might just find out. That's why.
Do the hairs still stand up in your head when the ballad of the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald comes out over the radio waves?
Yeah, I mean, I've sang it.
That's a powerful song.
I've sang it so many times, and knowing that I'm a friend of Gordon Lightfoot, and he remembers me by first name. Now that's to a guy that's internationally famous like that and only sees me once every 20 years. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
But he didn't forget family members' names, and I thought that was pretty good. Pretty good.
It's an amazing song. How about Bernie Cooper? I mean, he's the only one that can really help. He had taken on the security of Whitefish Bay, but then the Coast Guard saying, "Hey, Captain Bernie Cooper, can you turn around and go back out there and search for survivors? I mean, would you want to?" Yet, reluctant as he was, he still did.
Yeah.
That to me is amazing.
Let me say
That's
something
courage.
about Captain McSharley. That no disrespect intended to anybody. I'm just telling you a factor. He was known as a company man, and if you run extra trips so much, you get a great big bonus. And he was known as he was going to go no matter what. I don't mean no disrespect.
I know you don't.
I'm just
I
talking
understand
that
he
was going no matter what.
He was very well known as the guy that feared nothing. The Fitzgerald broke seasonal haul records
Absolutely.
at least 6 times. And he was all about getting as much product there and as fast as he could, and the gale warning wasn't going to stop him. He was a seasoned captain, serving more than 40 years as a captain. What's sad to me about McSorley is, based on everything I understand, this was to be his last run before he retired.
My Uncle Grant, too.
Really?
Yeah.
Their last run before they had to do
retired.
just one more, and they didn't get there. I mean,
Well, it's. I always say that, they say 29 crew members. My dad was the 30th victim of that boat. So how can I think of him every day? How can I not think about that, especially at this time of year? And I've kept my mouth shut for a lot of years about things that people have told me, but most of those people have passed away now.
Sure.
I'm just trying to tell you what they told me. Now, they wouldn't BS me? Why would they BS me? These people sailed there. This was a very tender boat. And how could it not be when you got 2 less bulkheads? Think about that. Those clamps that they said were not dug down, these hatch covers, these things weigh tons. I mean, these things aren't but could water get in there somehow? Yeah, but that's a real possibility that he was taken on that way. But I think the secret here is when the vents went off. Why do you have vents? Because they're ballast tank vents. They're not for the cargo hold, they're for the ballast tanks. And the minute he lost his vents, he lost those 2 vents where he bottomed out, and that ship hogged up. And that rail was gone. You've seen the rails. And them vents, you could take a sledgehammer on them all day long and you wouldn't bust them out of there. But 2 of them, just like that, I think that's what tells me that he bottomed out. Listen, you can dive on the Titanic if you want. You can dive on the Andrew Doria, Lusitania, go on, all kind of people, but Fitzgerald, you know why?
Off limits.
Off limits. Think about that. That's a red flag right there. They don't want nobody finding out what really went on there because of liability. No.
I thought it was interesting when they went down the last time they dove on the Fitz. They removed the bell, which is now in the museum at Whitefish Point. And when the bell first broke the surface, it moved and rang. Can you imagine that moment? Survivors on that ship that was overseeing the operation, the sons and the daughters, they were there. And when that bell surfaced, it moved and it rang. It's like, we're still here.
They said it was haunting. It was so quiet. And the minute it broke the surface, boom.
Can you imagine?
It was like, oh my God,
Wow.
And one guy that sat there, I'll never forget this. He said, I'm sitting there, and when that bell rang, he's sitting there like this, and here comes a butterfly and lands right on his finger and stayed there for some time. No, I remember my dad, before he died, he said, can't they just leave it alone? Because it bothered him so bad. He should have said something. Like maybe, hey company, this boat needs to get in dry dock now, But, we'll make a couple more runs here. We'll be fine. It was only a 17-year-old boat. That W.C. Richardson that I said was built in 1909.
Yeah, the Fitz was built in 58,
Yeah.
57, 58.
But they shouldn't have been loaded that deep in November.
Yeah. Heading over the mighty Maumee River here in Toledo, Ohio. Next stop, the National Museum of the Great Lakes. Just off of Front Street here alongside the Maumee River, I can remember it was in this very slip the first time I ever crawled onto a tugboat and sailed off with a barge in late 1978. It was right there. See that opening here in the slip? That's where the tug and barge unit was, and that's where I piled on and took off on an adventure I'll never forget. But the reason I showed you this, because this would have been one of the slips where the Edmund Fitzgerald would have stayed for the winter here in Toledo, Ohio. It was interesting because the Fitzgerald had a special connection to Toledo. It was here so much that it got the nickname the Toledo Express, being that it harbored here and spent so much time here. This was really its main port. National Museum of the Great Lakes. I like that entrance sign, and it's right here in Toledo for all of us locals to enjoy. So welcome to the National Museum of the Great Lakes. This covers it all, from maritime technology to the very beginning of shipping on the Great Lakes, from the first settlers to modern day. The museum really does a nice job of covering each and every component. Well over 300 artifacts. Look at that, the Pretoria. Wow, the ship's bell. Lost on Lake Superior in 1905. This bell was probably rung continuously in her last minutes in a desperate attempt to communicate with the Venezuela. So yeah, all these cool artifacts, lots of audio and visual displays, photography that's just incredible throughout the museum. Probably its most prized possession, at least to me, one of the original life rafts from the Edmund Fitzgerald, and life ring from the Fitz. Life ring from the Carl D. Bradley, which went down, broke in half and sank in Lake Michigan in 1958. Even a little framework from the Niagara, which Commodore Oliver Hazard Perry sailed into the British fleet in 1813 during the War of 1812, but wow, that's cool.
You are above the Fitz's cargo section.